Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Anarata Bashaliva, along with the co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Shrey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Library and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. Please feel free to use the chat to post any questions for our guests. To access the chat, please, and then quick greetings from our viewers in Ukraine from Professor Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким поклоном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you. Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett.
Thank you very much, Anara. I am glad to welcome back friend of our program, Mr. Mjykola Konopinsky, who is originally from Odessa, Ukraine, living for the last 30 years in Germany. He is an independent journalist, mechanical engineer, and he has been on our program a couple of times before. Today, he chose as his presentation topic, Holodomor. November 25th was the day of remembrance of Holodomor, which is the brutal genocide of Ukrainians by the Soviet Communist government under the rule of Stalin in 1932-1933. Rough estimates of death range anywhere from 4 to 7 million people. I give my microphone to Mjykola Konopinsky in remembrance of those perished in Holodomor. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Hello, everybody, first of all, and I will share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, yes. Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the topic of today's discussion is Holodomor. I can't think that it's surprising or unexpected because last weekend, as Victor said already, Ukraine celebrated 90th anniversary of this terrible event. Everyone can find a lot of information in internet about this, about the statistic and scale of this crime of Muscovy. Today, only the lazy or stubborn can still doubt that the famine had a hand-made nature. The reason why Muscovy took this step are also clear. And yet, I would like to return once again to this crime and its causes, and look at them from a somewhat different position. If somebody need more information or have a question, just feel free to interrupt me every moment. It's no problem for me. So, I will not like bore you with statistic. There is, as I told, is enough data in internet, and the stated number of victims varies between 4.5 and 12 millions. Even you can find a 15 millions, as well as 300,000. So it's a huge difference between the figures. And each figures claims to be reliable and confirmed by the logic and the author's statistical calculations. Please pay attention not on the figures now, but on the difference. We are talking about at least 8 million people. We have to realize it. Give or take 8 million people. We are talking about the whole residents of countries like Paraguay, Laos, Bulgaria, Serbia, or twice as much as modern Ireland. This difference alone should show us what kind of enemy Ukrainians are dealing with. The Germans, for example, while exterminating Jews, gypsies, mentally ills, and homosexuals, keep malicious statistics, including not only victims' personal data, but all that was taken from them. This allowed researchers to give an accurate figure of the victims of the Nazi regime. The Russians, on the other hand, simply took away all food supplies from Ukrainians, cordoned off Ukraine and Kuban with army, and left them to their fate. And after that, in the 60s, they changed the demographic statistics several times, adjusting the figures for population losses to acceptable and explainable ones. And in the summer 1941, before the German came, they simply burned all Ukrainian archives. So you can see on the slide, sorry, it's technical. But even according to the one of smallest figure, it's published last week by Pravda Ukraine. At the apology of the famine in June 33, an average of 28,300 people a day died in Ukraine. It means 1.2 thousand per hour. No extermination machine anywhere in the world achieved such productivity. The Russians in 32-33 managed to create the cheapest and efficient human butchery tool in the history of mankind. And in the same time, the most, how can I put it, neutral and harmless. To this day, not only Russians, but many foreign historians talk about the crop failure, bad weather condition, and the fact that it was not only Ukrainians that were dying. What few words about these figures. We should be very careful with the figures usual when we come in touch with Moscovians information. We should never forget all statistics in Russia always were, is, and will be a political matter. We don't have independent Ukrainian statistic. Statistic of deaths from famine in Ukraine were kept according to Moscow's methodology. This is the first thing. The second, as I mentioned before, all archives have been either deleted or move it to Moscow before German invention. So we don't know how deep and wide the data have been purged. Hence, there is no data we can rely on. We can only believe. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a brand new data. Was never published before. The last week, Pravda Ukraine published this number: 1,022 cases of cannibalism in Ukraine within these 8 months of famine. But with this data is the same problem. It's data that's all cases of cannibalism were investigated as a simple murder. We are speaking here about 1,022 cases that searchers can find out among this all cases of murder in the Ukraine. The real number could be much bigger. But let us go back to the causes of famine. There is this two causes well known. It's industrialization and need of destroy the free peasantry. And this is absolutely true. USSR, continuing the century-old tradition of Moscovian Russia, was preparing by Stalin regime the last one war with the aim to conquering the whole Europe. The free peasant, freely disposing of the result of his labor, was at that time the main obstacle to the creation of the powerful military industry. Lenin spoke about the war against the peasants, emphasizing that NEP, new economy politic in the Soviet Union, is only a temporary respite, and the struggle with peasants will be even more desperate, even more cruel than the struggle with Kolchak and Denikin. So following these two reasons, again, it's industrialization and destruction of the peasants, we can understand why in the other regions of Soviet Union, peasants' freedom was destroyed by forcing them into collective farms. But this reason do not give an answer on the main question: why only in Ukraine and Kuban were exterminated peasants themselves by taking away not only grain, but also a food supplies, tools for food preparation, and depriving peasants suffering of famine leave the place of residence. So here you can see a hand mill. Ukrainian peasants used such mills to grind the small portions of grain. By a special secret decree of the Central Committee, in the summer of 1932, special brigades were created which went door to door and broke these mills. Broke because the mill is too heavy to carry it away. it happened even before the decree of 6th of December 1932 of blacklisting villages that maliciously sabotaged grain procurement, which actually, this decree, it's actually started the mass famine. Moscow was creating conditions for the easiest and most effective execution of the plan 6 months before the beginning of the famine. And the question still remains, why only Ukrainians? The answer will be found in the history. We must only not tear Holodomor out of the entire historical chain of Ukrainian-Muscovite relation. This is paragraph 4 of this Seira of hand mills on the slide. So since the annexation of part of the right bank Ukraine in 1654, the war between Ukraine and Muscovy has not stopped until today. The first military clash took place 3 years after Pereyaslav in 1658. And always Moscow responded to Ukrainian with unprecedented cruelty. Just recall the Baturin massacre organized by Menshikov against the women and children of the old Hetman capital. Or Lviv, its population was subjected to bloody repression by Russian troops twice during the quarter of century, in 1915 and in 1939, or the 4-year war 1918 to 1922, which still call it civil war, and endless surprising of Ukrainian peasants in the Ukrainian peasants, and only in within the first 6 months of 1932, there were 900 peasants uprising against the Moscow power. Just to give you a picture, what does it mean? The uprising of Ukrainian peasants and German farmers in the 20s forced Moscovites move some forces from front, and Denikin used the opportunity and captured the whole south part of Ukraine, including Kherson, Nikolaev, and Odessa. So it was a very hard for Moscow. So then Holodomor, according to Stalin's plan, was to put an end to the Ukrainian freedom and dreams of independence forever. It was supposed to be the final solution of the Ukrainian question. Famine turned out to be the most suitable tool here. Painful, long, and terrible deaths, driving people to suicide, cannibalism, corpse eating, and madness, visibility and universality of the death. There was no one to remove corpses. People were no longer buried or even taken to ditches already in autumn 1962. All this, according to the Kremlin plans, should have forever discouraged the survivors from rebelling against the Moscow's power. And the plan, to some extent, exceeded. My grandmother and my parents, all survivors of Holodomor, never talked about it with us children. My grandmother would only sometimes, when I was already a student, whisper. It was scary. We would have eating sheet, but there was no sheet. The designers of Holodomor also had another goal. Russians were resettled in places of extinct Ukrainians. Thus, Moscow hoped to delude Ukrainians and by natural assimilation through marriages and joint children to create finally one nation, Russian. But the events of 1991 showed that no of the goals worked in the long term. 97% of the Ukrainian population voted for independence. So you can intimidate a person, but you cannot intimidate a folk. Today, we are experiencing the next attempt of final solution of the Ukrainian question. The war of Moscow started against the Ukraine 10 years ago, bears all the features we know from history. Extreme, exceptional cruelty towards the civilians, destruction of all cultures and historical heritage, burning of books and archives. Holodomor was one of the battle of the war that had lasted for 3.5 centuries. The most terrible, most inhuman, most merciless, but nevertheless one of many. Ukrainians proved there is no final solution of the Ukrainian question possible. What the Tsarist and communist regimes were unable to destroy within 3.5 centuries, the current democrats will not be able to destroy too. Today, we have a chance to finish this war. If Ukraine does not win it, the bloody conflict will be passed on to our children. Do we dare to do that? And isn't it better now, today, to finally resolve the Russian question? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mykola, for the wonderful and tragic presentation, and I'm sure we have enough questions to ask here. Dr. Deutsch.
I have two questions. Right before his latest invasion, Putin issued a statement rationalizing or explaining what he was attempting to do. Did Stalin ever issue a paper, or have scholars ever been able to find a written rationalization for what the Soviet Union did in 1932 to 1933? That's one question. The other one is, was there a memorial that some kind of a statue, or I don't know exactly what it was, for the Holodomor, that the Russian invaders tried to destroy the first few days of the latest invasion?
So just need to prove whether I got your question in the correct way. The first one, that's about written evidences of Holodomor, that Holodomor was driving from Moscow or directly implemented. Correct?
Well, if he had a theoretical justification for what he did, other than the peasants were unruly, why try to practiced genocide upon a whole people. I mean, millions of people. How did he explain that to anybody else?
No, whom they should explain it.
Well, to the world. I mean, the world was must have, to some extent, observed what was going on in Russia. There must have been some journalists who were providing information to the world's population. Usually, whether it's in China or wherever, you have the leader of the country giving some kind of a rationale for what they are doing. What was Stalin's explanation for this?
Stalin's explanation and for that was that Ukrainian peasants, not Ukrainian, that's what's not use this word. The peasants as a whole are a capitalist. The first step of capitalism, and there is a battle between the past and the future. And if we stay for future, for communism, so we have to destroy our past. This capitalism cells in our mentality and in our society. That the first one. The second one, there is no. We have to. It's explanation of official side. We have to build a huge industry. The Russia was a third world before revolution and after revolution. After 6 years, so-called civilian war was destroyed till the bottom. So we need to build the new industry and the best industry of the world. So we need a grain, we need a food for workers.
Well, peasants weren't capitalists, and peasants were providing the food. It seems like you're really biting the hand that feeds you when you kill the serfs or the peasants, the agricultural workers.
That's exactly what communists do.
Okay, that's sad.
I might add here more pointedly, Mykola, if you allow, there were journalists, of course. Many of them were glorifying Stalin's industrialization and collectivization. There was a lot of Potemkin villages built for the foreigners. But when there was a case when Stalin was confronted directly by a famous socialite, Lady Astor, of American-British origin, and Lady Astor, in personal interview, asked Stalin, "Why do you kill your own people?" And Stalin absolutely quietly said, "Because we have class struggle, because if we don't kill them, they will kill us." And he was right. So it was war. That's all. They called it class war. Their goal was not to sustain society, but to have power, just like it is 100 years after.
But would the peasants really have been a threat to the aristocracy? Like, would they really? Is it really true that if they don't kill them, that they would have killed them in return?
It's not aristocracy, if I may say. It's a communist criminal leaders who seized power in the cities, and that's why we had civil war lasting for many years, and Ukraine was the central part of it. Mykola, we stole your microphone, please.
No, it's okay.
If you can add something on this topic, because clearly it is a mix between class war and genocide. And many people until this day argue that Stalin's rule was equally brutal to all ethnic groups of the Soviet Union. So one should not distinguish, but we shouldn't forget that Ukraine was and still is the breadbasket of the former empire and Europe and the
Ukrainians
world.
is and is still remain the breadbasket, but it's I told you I try to explain it. Ukrainian is still in the war since 3,500 years. There are no other population. There Yakutian and Kamchatka. There was still in war more than 100 years against Russian imperialism. Yeah, since Ekaterina II almost till October Revolution. It was a war, and Russian cannot win this war. It's only communism. If you remember the film Начальник Kamchatki, it was the first experience that Russia have a full power over the Kamchatka. But again, the Ukrainian is more the biggest one folks group in Russia, in Soviet Union, and there are always the war in the Ukraine. Ukraine is always fight against Russia for independence. So that is the main explanation of this terrible event in early 30s.
Yeah, the Ivan Franko quote, our whole life is war, is very, very applicable, not only in his own lifetime, but it does seem like that is a true statement for you, Ukraine. That's a very good, very powerful quote. And the image you showed of the broken millstone, that's also very powerful. Too heavy to carry away, so they break it. That's just one of these little moments where the enormity of what that broken millstone represents can easily be overlooked. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Anara, you have a question, please.
Hello again. Thank you very much for your great presentation, very relevant today. It turns out only 23 countries recognize Holodomor today, mostly in Europe and some countries in Latin America. And I was surprised, only 5 post-Soviet republics, 3 Baltic states and Georgia and Moldova recognize Holodomor. And it's especially interesting that Kazakhstan also had the famine, could be compared to Holodomor. 1.5 million people died in the early 1930s. We also know about the cases of Holodomor, also cases of cannibalism. And my question is, what could be done in order to understand better the nature of Holodomor, and also responsibility of Russia for this genocide? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. It's a great question. The first of all, according to my information, not my information, but Wikipedia, it's 35 countries over the world recognize the famine as Holodomor against Ukrainian people. The second part is what should be done. Just keep in mind that till 1991, the topic was absolutely secret in the Soviet Union. In 1991, I was already 32 years old. And again, I heard it only from my grandmother about this. And only this phrase, I put it here. She don't want to speak about it. So in Soviet Union, it was absolute forbidden to speak about it. So only Ukrainian in Canada keep it alive. This remembers of this terrible event. And now, step by step, Ukrainian make it this remembers alive and goes with information over the world, and the opportunity, the fight from against side, it's very hard. But in the past, 10 years ago, it was only one book about the famine, is von Conquest, the Harvest of Sorrow. But now that's Anne Applebaum and several other historians and writers dealing with this problem. So I think we are in good moving, and almost every month we have a new country recognize this famine as Holodomor. So
thank you. And
yeah,
I also see in Wikipedia that out of 50 United States, only 32 recognize formally this. Maybe others just do not know they can do it, or should. This would be one thing to do. Dr. Deutsch, you have another question, please.
Let me put myself back on. I just looked this up on Wikipedia, on Google. The Russians, it says, are destroying monuments to the victims. I'm sorry about that. Judith, can you take that? To the victims of the Holodomor in the occupied territories of Ukraine, in particular in Kherson Oblast. Invaders demolished 14 memorial places. So they're trying to eradicate this. They deny that this happened, and they're trying to erase it from the minds of Ukrainians.
Wow.
sorry, it was a question.
Well, it was a question I had asked previous to my last question, and then I looked it up. And
it was your
found out-
second question.
That was my second question, and I had vaguely remembered it, but looking it up now, I see that the Russian troops and their commanders find it offensive that the Ukrainians remember what was done to them in the 1930s, and they're denying it. They're destroying evidence if they can.
Of course,
In
Yeah,
fact,
all right.
yes. In fact, last week, Russian embassy in the United States officially protested against Holodomor remembrance, saying that all these are false allegations.
Yeah. That's again, it's what is the lack of information of this event. That's make a problem because again, it's the all information was the Soviets and still remain in Moscow archives, and there is it's a very difficult to get this information, and also if you will get it, it's the information is cutted, is shirted. It's not a full scale of information, but it's absolutely clear that only in Ukraine. That's only in Ukraine and Kuban. Why in Kuban? Because in Kuban was close to, next to the 90% of Ukrainian lived. The official language was Ukrainian. Almost all schools was in Ukrainian language. And these two regions was a famine. This was its Holodomor. And only in these regions would be take out not only the grain, but all the eating. It was a lot of memories of people. They saying that if this brigade come in house, they took also the prepared eating for evening. It's not, yeah. So that if they're gone, then family has for next day nothing, absolutely nothing. It was not in White Russia or other regions. It was only in two regions, in Ukraine and Kuban, and that is documentally stated.
I have a question at this point,
Yeah.
Mykola. Do we have information on who were those brigades? Were they recruited local communists or also NKVD troops which came from outside of Ukraine? Do we know?
Thank you, Victor. It's a very good question. The first time till approximately November of 32, it was Ukrainians ones. So it was people in villages, the peasants themselves, that just believe in the communist idea and all this future visions, if I can put it in this way. But after the November, as corpses lying on the streets and children was dying, and there was villages, there was no one man that can bore to take away these corpses. So then Ukrainian, it was a lot of communist leader as the low level, and Soviets leader, and simple people. They try to help these peasants and to not so hard go ahead with this grain and food takeoff. But and in this time it was people from outside. It's documentary stated.
Thank you. Do we have more
It was
questions? Katerina, please.
sorry.
Yes.
If you remember, it was 25-тысячники, 25,000.
25,000 of recruited communists from all of Russia, yes.
Yeah.
This is known, well known. Katerina, you had a question?
Yes, I'm actually, as we all are talking, I'm looking at an article written about, there's so many, as you pointed out, before 20 years ago, it was very limited information out there, especially in English, about the Holodomor. And now, thankfully, the world is aware of it and scholars do write on it. And so as we were talking and you were mentioning the horrible situation, I Googled for some images of the Holodomor, which I'm tragic. They're absolutely tragic, and I'm not going to share them because they are absolutely horrible. But I came across an article that actually makes the argument that the famine is not only an event in Ukraine's past, it is an event in its present and future, that there is this ongoing trauma that, in fact, the title of the article is Holodomor is Ukraine's never-ending trauma. And so to connect this back to Dean Deutsch's question about monuments being destroyed, it's just interesting. It's just interesting that some events are so horrible that that you don't recover. You live with them, but you don't recover. The comparison would be to a human being. Something tragic happens in childhood, and it never leaves you. You live with that trauma. And so also for Ukraine too, that the Holodomor is still present. I don't. It's just something we're all very, very aware of. I just thought that was interesting, and I'm very grateful for your presentation. I'm grateful for your balance of telling us the numbers, the statistics, but also the impact and the ideas and thoughts behind it. So I'm very, very grateful to you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Дякую.
Thank
Щиро
you.
дякую.
Нема. Дякую вам.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you, Mykola. I would just remind for our viewers who may not be as familiar with Soviet history that the techniques that Stalin's secret police and KVD at this time they used for the so-called collectivization in 1930s were quite already elaborate, and they would come as a brigade, as Mykola said, and liquidate the entire possessions of the family, even if family was not deported at the same time. They would take cattle and horses and all means of survival, cows, pigs, chicken, grain, the seed grain for next harvest, clothes from the closets, any kind of preserved or canned food for winter, and shoot the father or mother with kids who would have been left naked outside in the snow. Nobody would threaten or interfere in this because it was a total totalitarian power at this time. And this was only 15 years, one generation after the communist revolution of 1917. So this is why events could happen very, very precipitously, very fast. Literally in less than 2 years, all these millions of people perished, and information to the world was literally not available. It was very heavily controlled information. I'm just clarifying a few, connecting a few dots here, if you don't mind. And Mykola, you mentioned that your own family was at this time in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Can you say a couple of words about the region and what you know about this place?
So from my mother's side, the family was living in close to Odessa. There is an Teligul river. There is a small city, Berezovka, and close to this Berezovka, quite on the other side of the river, is a very small dorf, Zbrushkivka. So from this dorf, from this village comes family of my mother. My mother was 5 years old, and he left me written memories of this time and of what has happened after this. And it's very interesting. I have found last week a book, the documentary book. It's archives of this time. Who of peasants was in this region? Raskulachin, I don't know in English.
Well, liquidated as
liquidated,
as
just yeah,
Yes.
just yeah, to leave his possession. And I have found a name of my grandfather. And so after this action, the family father is disappeared, just keep hidden, and go out to Georgia. In Georgia, there was no collectivization, was no Hungary, was nothing, and he still remained there. My grandmother was taken everything away, including a home. So it was November, and this lady with 3 kids, my mother was the youngest one, 5 years old, still at 4 in the morning was thrown out from home without the money, without eating, without nothing, and have to go somewhere. It was a terrible. So they find some home in the Berezovka, and after a few months they have a huge luck, a huge luck that they come to Georgia to father before the passport was implemented in Russia. That the next step of Stalin's politic against Ukrainian. It was implemented in December 32 passports. And without the passports, you cannot leave your residence. And according to the law, the peasants don't get a passport. The passport was only for citizens of residents of cities, workers, and so on, not for peasants. With this law, peasants was just slave, turned to slave in our village, in own villages. So my grandma with 3 kids, just few weeks before this law, go to Georgia. It's maybe that's the reason I can speak with you now.
Yes,
what
thank you.
is very interesting, what as I tell you about the statistic and archives data and so on. In this documentary book, it's documentary, it's a copy of archive, state that by my grandfather, by this action, was nothing took away. Nothing. So it means house and all eating or everything was still remain in possession of my family. And it's absolutely lying. It's it's my family lose everything, and this only clothes they have on, they can take it with, and nothing else. So my father was in this time 70 years old and was a worker in Odessa. In the city, the workers got I think at about 300 grams bread and the workers' day. And so he still survive. He told it was a hard. The streets was full with peasants, starving, and dying. And he told me one times, I go to my work in the morning, and there's sitting a man and asking for small part of bread or something for eating. And if I go back after my work, he was die already. And it was every day his experience.
Thank you. I see more questions. One of our viewers, Bob Fay, please.
Hi, this is Bob McCollister.
Yes, Bob. Hi.
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 Sorry, I got on just a little bit late. I was on another call. This is an extraordinary period of time. I don't think a lot of Americans really understand. There's a lot that's been written about the Holocaust under the Nazis, but this period of history from Stalin's speech at the Party Congress in December 28 until, 10 years later, you have this, first of all, forced collectivization, the Holodomor, and then following right on the heels of that, Stalin's Great Purge. And in my studies in graduate school, and I just finished reading Timothy Snyder's book, Bloodlands, it seems to me sometimes that the estimates of the number of people that died seem like they're all over the park. I think Timothy Snyder thinks about 4 million people died in Ukraine. And my question is, because I've been trying to nail this down, do we have a consensus number now for how many people died, not only in Ukraine, but generally in forced collectivization across the Soviet Union, and then in the Great Purge? Because the numbers for the purge to me seem even more hard to pin down. Do you have a number that, is there a consensus number, or do you have a number that you think is accurate?
No, there is no number. And from my opinion, there is no number possible. I tried to explain it through my presentation because it's the initial data was wrong because of order from Moscow. And then this initial data was several times changed. And now the last week, for example, you can find it in YouTube at this small film. It's about a quarter an hour about this statistic. And they say that now some Ukrainian historians a few years ago was able to steal in Moscow archives the true data and so on and so on. And according to this data, they calculated this with American colleagues and come to 4.5 million. But the same great names in the history, science, and in statistic and so on, argumented the numbers of 7 millions or even the 12 millions. So, and on the other hand, I read some investigation of one professor from Jerusalem University. He told about 300,000 and no more. So it's, I know I can give you one number, and I keep keep on this number. It's 7 millions because 7 millions by President Yushchenko, 2004-2010. There was a huge job made according towards find out the really number of victims. And it was published, the Book of Remember of Ukraine or something like this. This book include 7 million names, plus minus. And there is several historians give the same data. Yeah. So, and for me, it's approximately in the middle between the 4 millions and 12 millions.
Yeah.
You know, just as I told you in my presentation, we can only believe, because again, it's every scientist, every historian finds some documents, some archives data, and said, "Oh, that's really true." But again, in Soviet Union, it's nothing true. It's what's hard to believe in the West, that you cannot rely on nothing, and absolutely nothing.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Mykola,
Thank you,
before we go
Mykola.
on to the next before we go on to the next question, could you stop sharing
Yes.
your screen? That way we can see everybody better.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McAllister, for the questions. And I need to add here, maybe again, to put things in perspective, that we're talking about events of only a decade after the brutal civil war, about which we also do not have and never will have statistics. We don't know how many people perished in the same regions during Russian civil war of approximately 1918, 1920. And I do not believe that Soviets kept a good census of population between those dates anyway. So it's very hard. Even harder probably is to estimate number of victims during the Second World War. Official Russian numbers at different times varied at plus minus 10 or 20 million people. So this statistic says, as Mykola said, is not reliable, unfortunately. And I had one more question to clarify. You said, Mykola, that Ukrainian archives, party archives, were burned at some point.
Yeah, it's
the
for
Communist
example
Party
Kiev,
archives from 1930s. Yeah.
The state archive of Kiev, of Ukrainian archive, state Ukrainian archive in Kiev, was partly burnt away, and partly took to Moscow, and come never again back to Kiev. Yeah, that's the reason for this film I mentioned for few minutes, that Ukrainian searchers, just as a spy, come to this archive and took this data, that's tables of victims numbers. But again, I can't believe it. You cannot rely on it, because you know that's with a counting of it was this 36 or 37, Stalin make a counting of people, residents of Soviet Union, and then they got I think 20 or so millions less than expected. The reason was, of course, famine and so on. And then the people who provided this counting was shot and make a new one, that another people make a new one, and it was a number that suited for Stalin's plan. So you you cannot rely on nothing.
Thank you. Do we have more questions or comments from the audience, please?
Yeah.
Please.
Anara, did you have a question? Your hand is up.
No, it's just, I don't know, it did not actually, it still appears, but I've already had. Thank you.
Okay. If we have no questions or comments, I would like to thank Pan Konopinsky, Mykola Konopinsky from Germany, who joined us today for our 92nd meeting of Ukraine discussion group. And I would like Dr. Katerina Shrey to say our customary greetings to our Ukrainian viewers, please.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні!
Слава
Героям
Україні!
слава.
Героям слава! Дякую. Щиро дякую
Щиро
всім
дякую.
вам за вашу допомогу.
Thank you.